I'm Mohammed, and you're watching EOtv.
Welcome to EOtv. I'm Andrea Collins.
And I'm Randall Mauricio. This is your weekly Entrepreneurs Organization webcast.
And Randall, have you ever left a bad impression by making an ungraceful exit?
An ungraceful exit?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, but why would you even assume I've ever done something like that?
Oh, I don't know. Just a hunch. Our top story today deals with tough exits and how to avoid making a mistake when exiting a business.
Well, thank you for thinking of me, Andrea. We also spoke to David Memento from our New York chapter, who shares with us how great leaders swim upstream, and a great tip of the week on managing the media when you have a crisis.
Sounds like a jam-packed show, so let's get to it. If you're thinking of exiting your company, there's a lot to consider. YPO member Basil Peters recently spoke with our Vancouver chapter, sharing some of the lessons he's learned from selling businesses during the tough economic conditions of the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s. Let's take a look.
We had literally never even discussed selling one of the companies. It would have been like trying to sell one of your kids. It just never occurred to us. So we were starting out cold at the worst possible time, and we didn't have a lot of time. But I can't believe that we didn't have an exit strategy. It wasn't written down, we'd never discussed it, the board never thought about it. And the idea that we came up with was to sell one of our companies to a big US defense contractor who we hoped wanted to be in a peace business. The business suffered a lot because in the time before we started to try and do the exit, we both worked 12 hours a day on the business. And with me switching entirely to a non-revenue generating external function, didn't take very long for that to make the business, which was already suffering, even worse. So I came away from that painful experience with the absolute conviction that the CEO should never lead the exit. It's the worst thing you could ever do. The second absolute always applies lesson, which is that every exit needs multiple bidders. You find yourself in a situation you're thinking about selling, there's only one guy bidding. If there's any possible way you can slow it down, back up, and try and get somebody else in the game, it's probably the best advice I could ever hope to convey. As I was almost killing myself to make the sale happen, at the same time, a VC on our board was working on a hostile takeover from the inside of the company. And this was another critical failure in my young, naive entrepreneurial understanding. So I didn't really understand how venture capital funds worked. And they'd invested about $3.20 a share. And I didn't know then, but I completely understand now, after being a VC for a few years, that there was no way that they were going to vote for a sale where they didn't make at least a 10x return on their investment. And our VC knew we'd missed this point, and he was covertly working to kill the deal. So another one of the things that I've learned, and hopefully we'll never forget, you should check the alignment annually, at least. Check just to make sure that everybody in the organization really is pulling in the same direction towards the same goals. And I have never seen a company go through an exit that did not still have structural defects. And the reason is that from an exit perspective, if you don't take a great deal of pain to fix them, the normal statutory law builds in serious defects that make it very hard to do an exit. So if you haven't looked at it, even if you're not thinking about an exit right now, get your lawyer, tell them that you might want to sell your company one of these days, and do the things that make sense to do so that when the time comes, you've got a half a chance of pulling off an exit.
In this member spotlight, Julie Skates, president and founder of J2T Recruiting Consultants and EO Denver member, shares how her company has gained strategic value and profitability from walking the talk when balancing work and life.
I'm Julie Skates. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and part of the Colorado EO chapter. I'm the founder and owner of J2T Recruiting. J2T is a search firm that specializes in accounting and finance. And we have offices in Denver, Dallas, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Chicago. I would say the most unique component to J2T is that when I state that we have offices in those markets, we actually do not. We are 100% virtual. All members of our staff, from myself, our controller, our director of operations, and all of our executive recruiters telecommute. We have found that with an industry and a community that is going more technological and specifically more work-life balance, that the opportunity for our staff to drive and dictate their day from the convenience of their home office gives both the employee as well as our organization better productivity, better profit, and truly better balance. I believe most companies really try to create work-life balance, but my experience is that very few actually live out that mission. And at J2T, we truly live that. We live that on a day-to-day basis, and our staff experiences that through the freedom and flexibility of their home office. And in return, everyone wins.
There's a saying out there that only dead fish swim with the current. Well, what does that mean? If you want to thrive in the current economy, you need to become a strong leader and push your business in the direction you want it to go. David Memento from our Western New York chapter shares with us some tips for strong leadership. Communicate. Engaging your staff in any necessary changes is crucial. In the current economy, they need to understand that it's time for sacrifice, and oftentimes they'll be happy to be part of the process if you let them. If it's time to cut expenses, they're the ones who will have the best ideas. Opportunities. New market trends or needs that reflect the current business climate will emerge. Leaders who keep their eyes out for these opportunities aren't afraid to act. Relationships. It's hard and expensive to bring in new business during a recession, so it's time to work even harder on building your customer relationships. Focus on your customer service to make sure your revenue isn't slipping away. Marketing. Many companies and a knee-jerk reaction shut off their advertising efforts during tough times, but this is the worst time to do so. By implementing some of David's tips into your leadership strategy, you may find yourself staying ahead of the current in this tough economic time.
John Macomber, professional speaker and CEO of Building Vision Inc., talks about managing the media when you're facing a crisis.
I'd like to give a tip about crisis management in media. I was involved in a service business that had multiple fatalities in a crane collapse. One of the don'ts is don't lose your cool on TV. That's what they're trying to get you to do. The second is don't allow reporters to cause number one. They're trying to get you to lose it. Third is don't expect that the press wants to learn or to play fair. That's not what their job is. Fourth is don't forget to pay attention to other people in relationships. The press is important, but a lot of other people rely on you as well. And the last thing is don't point blame or stonewall. The blame can come to you, and then other people maybe can talk about what actually happened, but it really looks ill if you're blaming people in the media. I'm John Macomber, and that's my tip of the week.
That's a wrap for this week's show. Make sure you join us again next week. And thanks again to Julie Skates, David Memento, and John Macomber for sharing your successes with your fellow members.
And you know, Andrea, I've been thinking about that graceful exit thing you mentioned earlier. I want to leave on this thought.
Okay?
Always leave them wanting more.
I like it. I like it, and I think that you may have just made that graceful exit. Good job. We'll see you next week.